In this demonstration, I'll show you how to work with sound inside of Adobe Animate. I'm going to start just by importing a couple of sound files, a few sound files. So I'll go File, Import, and I'm going to bring them straight to the library. So Import to Library. Okay, finally. And I do have some in the Downloads folder that I created. Now you'll receive a couple of folders like this. So I'm going to grab this one, Awareness 22, inside of Soundtracks, and I'll also grab some of those button sounds. So I'm going to go back here, Import to Library, and we'll go up and out to the button sounds. And I'll just grab them all. They're all very small. I'll shift click across and click OK. And let's just scoot over to the library here. And I'm going to save this file. I'll do a save as, and I think I'll just save it in this little folder I created, and I'll call it sound.fla. There we go. Okay, so we have all of these sounds in the library, and you can preview them once you highlight them. There's a little play button up here. And this is just sort of a Pink Floyd-y kind of a soundtrack piece here. These are all royalty free, by the way. Button sounds. So just stuff for you to work with here. And by the way, they are all MP3 files. Okay, so basically you apply them. I mean, you can use code to run sounds, but we're going to just learn how to work with the timeline and how to apply sounds in the timeline. So they basically get applied in a layer on the timeline. So I'm going to start with this first keyframe and go over to my properties. And you see a section called sound. And any sound that will be in your library will be in this pull down menu here. So let's just start with beep small. Okay. And what's really important here is this sync section. You have 4 choices: event, start, stop, and stream. The 2 that you will use almost always are between stream and event. And I can see here that it's defaulted onto stream, which is usually good, but in this case I want event. Short story is event for very short button type sounds. Stream for anything that's like music or any dialogue or anything that runs, I'll say, over 3 seconds maybe. So for long running sound, definitely use stream, because what stream means is that it will start playing before it fully downloads off the internet. Okay, but we're going to choose event for this particular one because it's a button sound. It runs, almost less than a second. And let me go down to the timeline here. I'm actually going to expand the view of the timeline, and you should be able to see a little line indicating the audio wave. So basically I'm going to span out further, and you'll see I'll go to frame 10 and hit F5 on my keyboard. And there you can see the span of that audio wave. So this tells you where it's playing. So in fact, yes, it is basically a half-second long thing here. And I can move the playhead back, and I can hit my enter key, my return key, and I can play it and hear it. I can also do a test move. I'm going to do it off the keyboard here. And because it loops, you're just going to hear that repeat over and over in a test movie. So that's the basic fundamentals on how to apply a sound in your timeline. You highlight the keyframe, you go over to the properties under sound, you assign which sound you want to play. If it's a button sound, it would be event. If it's a longer sound, you would choose stream. So let's talk about longer sounds. I can actually delete this or just simply replace it. And Awareness 22 is definitely a longer sound. Let me reduce the view of my timeline here. And we do need to set that on stream. Okay. Now the thing is, you'll fool yourself because even if it's set on event, locally, it will play back and there won't be any interruptions. But if you were to play this off a file online, which is what it's intended for, there would be issues. It would have to wait for it to completely download before it started playing, unless it's on stream. So the idea here too is when it's on stream, it will only play what is spanned out. So this is where you kind of get into a labor-intensive exercise where you click on a frame farther down the road and hit F5 to continue spanning. And if I reduce the view, that will help. And I can click down here and span to F5. Another way I can push this out is, let me just open this up a little bit here, is if I put my playhead, say, a frame before, I can actually just hold the F5 key down and it will push. So I'm just holding it down without clicking, and depending on the speed of your computer, it will push it out, as you can see here. So it's debatable with it whether this is quicker or whether clicking farther down the road and continuously hitting F5 is a faster way to go. I'm going to do the shrink view here and just click down the road and hit F5 until I see that running out. And you can scroll way past, right? And click here, F5. So they will take hundreds of frames for these longer pieces. And that's what I mean by it being a bit labor intensive. Okay, F5 again. What you're looking for is for it to thin out to a line and then ultimately disappear. And that will indicate the end of the sound. So there I can see that it's okay. I can actually grab this and drag that now like that. And I suppose I could have grabbed it and pulled it out as well. So there's 3 different ways to expand your sound on the timeline. So now let me hit playback, or actually I'll just put my playhead here and hit my return key. So I can literally listen to it in preview mode here, in author mode. And I can hit the return key to stop it as well. Or I can actually do a true test movie, which I'll do by hitting Control Return, which generates my actual movie. And just hang on and listen to that. You can probably hear my dog walking behind me here. Anyhow, this is for the longer sound, so it has to be set to stream. That's the takeaway here. Okay. Now it's not too practical though. Look at this. Let me just shrink the view again. It is shrunk. You know, for all my sounds to be on my timeline, it could get crazy and hairy and complicated. So really the best practice is to create a movie clip and put your sounds inside of the movie clip for longer sounds. And we'll deal with buttons on another short lesson. But for now, let me just take this and delete it here. Now, before I create the movie clip that will contain the sound, I want to delete this long span here, and it's currently highlighted. Let's say it wasn't highlighted. You can simply click the layer name, which will highlight everything in that layer. And I'm just going to use my Shift F5 command to delete all of those generated frames in that span. So I can just expand the view out here a bit more. And now on frame 1, I will create an object, and then I'll convert that to a movie clip, and inside of the movie clip is where I'll create the sound. So I'm just going to use my rectangle tool and use the default. I had been using a gradient, so this will generate a gradient filled image, if you will. And I'm just going to select the whole thing and go convert to symbol, and we'll make sure it's a movie clip. And I'll call this long sound. This is what it'll be called in the library. Okay, and let's double click it to go into that timeline. So it's here that I will span it out across whatever, couple thousand frames, if you will. And I'll also do that with respect to the graphic, just so that I can see it. So I'm just going to span out really to frame, looks like 30 here, and hit F5. Then I'll create a new layer, and I'll actually name it. I'll call it sound. And in that first frame of the new layer, it will also assume that same span. I'm going to go over to the properties and put in the file called awareness22.mp3. Make sure that I am set on stream, which by default seems to be the case, and then expand it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click right here, and by holding down F5, it pushes the frames out. Now I'm going to reduce the view of my timeline as well, and we just push that out. Now the other option once again is I can click and drag downwards across those frames and hit F5, and that's another way to kind of get the span. And the third way, I guess, is to grab it by the end of the frame and drag it. But there's two different layers here, so that can be cumbersome too. I'm going to go back to my first method here. I'm going to push the playhead back just a little bit, and I'm holding down my F5 key. Alright, so I can see this is going to take a little while. So I think I will edit this video. So in the next couple of seconds I'm going to suddenly and magically be at the end. Okay, so here we go. Okay, now I'm just going to push that out a little further. Yes, I magically skipped into the future here. And what you're looking for at the end is for that line to end, basically. That means I'm at the end of my sound here. I could go just before it and hit my return key. It's actually, I guess it faded out a bit before there, so go back here, hit my return key. And you can just use your ears to actually hear it fade out or end, whatever the case may be. And let's see here. And so you can see how many frames. We're in almost the 3000s here. Yeah, we just passed 3000. And then it fades away. And then ultimately that audio wave image disappears at the end there. Okay, so that's inside of a movie clip called long sound. So let's go back to scene one. And let me just expand this out so you can see. So I'm actually running on a single frame in my scene one timeline, but I have a whole song playing on that one frame, and I can prove it. Now it won't play back if I hit return. When you hit return in author mode, it does not play nested elements inside of movie clips. You actually have to do a test movie. So let's just go here, test movie. And you should hear that start up. There we go. I'm not going to listen to the whole thing, but there it is playing. And in fact, it's now playing on a single frame. So that's a heck of a lot easier to manage when you've got a lot of things going on the stage and so on. Okay, and if I don't want to see my little placeholder graphic, I could conceivably just get rid of it altogether, or I can actually just drag it off the stage. So if I ever do want to use the graphics or whatever, it's still available. It will still play back. Let me just do another test movie on the keyboard. And it will still play back. You just don't see the graphic element. You certainly will still hear the sound that plays back. Okay, so that's probably the better strategy for playing longer sounds, which is, again, to embed the sound inside of a movie clip, because they do have to play out over the duration of the frames for the streamed sounds, and that was a streamed sound. So those are the essentials for working with sounds, with event sounds for short sounds, and for longer sounds which we need to stream. In another lesson, we'll actually get into the details on how to apply a sound to a button. But that is how to create longer sounds in Adobe Animate.